Hello and welcome to Midday Report on TVP World. I'm Marie Cato. European Union leaders have approved a new package of sanctions against Russia. The move comes as Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy challenges Vladimir Putin to meet him for direct peace talks in Turkey. So far, the Kremlin has not confirmed whether the Russian president will travel to Istanbul. Our correspondent in Kyiv, Oz Katerji, explains the unfolding developments.
The European Union has announced its 17th round of sanctions against the Kremlin, this time targeting Russia's shadow oil fleet that Russia's been using to gain oil revenue throughout this period of sanctions on Russian energy products. Now, given that this round of sanctions has just taken place, one would be forgiven for thinking this was the massive wave of sanctions threatened by those European leaders of Britain, France, Germany and Poland against Moscow, should Moscow not agree to a 30-day unconditional ceasefire with Ukraine starting on Monday. Monday came and went and Russia did not agree to a 30-day unconditional ceasefire with Ukraine. Instead, Putin took to the airwaves and demanded direct discussions between Russia and Ukraine to take place on Thursday in Istanbul. President Zelenskyy, for his part, the Ukrainian government, agreed to those proposals and are going to Turkey on Thursday with those discussions in mind. However, President Putin has not agreed to attend the talks that he himself called for. And this is a massive embarrassment for the United States' policy of trying to bring Russia and Ukraine to the negotiating table to try and discuss an end to the war. Now, so far, the US has been very relinquent to put pressure on Russia. They have been putting most of their pressure on the Ukrainians. So far, the Ukrainians have agreed to everything the Americans have asked them to do with regards to an unconditional ceasefire, with regards to meeting Putin with no preconditions. Putin, however, has obfuscated and delayed and given excuses for reasons why he cannot agree to any of these conditions. The question is, what will be the response if come Thursday, Putin doesn't come to Istanbul, there are no negotiations, there is no ceasefire? Where does that leave Washington's position on Russia? Will it then apply the massive sanctions that those European leaders of France, Britain, Germany and Poland called for in Kyiv on the weekend? Or will they continue to delay trying to apply any pressure on the Russians in the hope that they can still bring them to the negotiating table? So far, all we have seen from Moscow is further rounds of delays, further rounds of excuses, and further reasons why they will not agree to a ceasefire between Russia and Ukraine. The question remains, where does that leave Washington's policy going forward? It's Oz Katerji reporting from Kyiv for TVP World.
Members of NATO's military committee have met in Brussels to discuss the biggest challenges facing the alliance. This includes scaling up defence as well as making the ambitions of political leaders a reality. We are now joined by our EU correspondent Angela Skujins in Brussels. Good afternoon, Angela. What are we expecting from today's discussions?
Yes, so we heard from the chair of that NATO military committee, Admiral Giuseppe Dragone. He addressed reporters at 8 a.m. On Wednesday morning regarding the thrust of today's talks in the Belgian capital. Now, there are 3 points at the core of these discussions. The first is strengthening the NATO military alliance. The second is shoring up ongoing support for Ukraine as it weathers another year of Russian invasion. And the third point is doing the necessary preparatory work before that NATO summer summit at The Hague. Let's take a listen to what the Admiral had to say regarding the agenda for today's discussions.
Our focus must remain on what truly matters: strengthening our deterrence and defense capabilities, enhancing our engagement with partners, and ensuring the security of our citizens and allies against recognized and potential threats. On top of this, our support to Ukraine shall and will remain ironclad, so that when the time will come, Kyiv will be able to sit at the negotiating table from a position of strength. All this requires investing time and resources. because peace and stability cannot be taken for granted and come with a price. But the cost of security is nothing compared to the cost of fighting a war and recovering from it. If we do not continue to invest in this vaccine of deterrence, we expose ourselves to an increased risk of instability and make ourselves unnecessarily vulnerable to threat. Investing more, and not just spending more, is paramount to maintaining our peace now and in the future.
Yes, so that is officially what is on the agenda today for that NATO military committee meeting. But the speculation is rife here in the Belgian capital that those representatives from those 32 alliance members will be discussing the rumours that that NATO funding benchmark is expected to be scaled up from 2% of a member's GDP to at least 5%. This will be hammered out at that NATO summer summit at The Hague. But at the core of that 5% is the 3.5% being specifically on military, with that extra 1.5% an expectation that alliance members spend more money on anything related to defence. We're talking about cybersecurity to other kinds of resilience infrastructure. But this will be all put to bed at a press conference at 5:45 this evening. And that's all from Brussels. I'll send it back to you to Warsaw.
Angela Skujins reporting from Brussels. Thanks very much. European NATO leaders have come to terms with the possibility that the US will not fully commit to its obligations under the alliance. Former US Army counterintelligence officer David DeBasso told TVP World that other NATO member countries don't realize the risk of the United States taking a backseat.
Look, one of the biggest problems, if not the biggest problem, aside from the lack of political will of NATO leaders to be honest and have an honest discussion with their public, is for the NATO leaders to accept the fact that America is no longer going to lead NATO. Whether that means that they're not going to support NATO if an Article 5 emergency is declared, for example, that remains to be seen. But I wouldn't count on it. NATO has to proceed right now as if America is not going to be there to support them. I hate to say that. It hurts me very, very deeply to have to say that. But I don't believe that right now, again, and I'll use the Estonia Narva example, I don't believe that the 82nd Airborne is going to be dropping into Estonia if Russia went across the Narva River into Estonia. That's a horrible thing to say. Would America eventually contribute some forces if that, in fact, occurred? Probably. But look, NATO has to accept the fact that they're pretty much on their own, and they need to get their act together now.
Belgium will deploy 800 troops and 300 vehicles to Romania to strengthen NATO's eastern borders. They will be a part of a multinational battle group under French command. The Belgian deployment to the base in central Romania shores up NATO's presence in the region, while also being close enough to Ukraine to demonstrate rapid reaction capabilities of the alliance. Belgium has pledged to invest an extra €4 billion yearly in defence, taking it above the NATO-mandated 2% of GDP threshold. The country is among those NATO members that failed to meet the defence spending minimum in 2024. A Russian court has sentenced Grigory Melkonian's, head of the country's only independent election watchdog, to 5 years in a penal colony, deepening fears over the Kremlin's tightening grip on dissent. Melkonian was found guilty of collaborating with an undesirable organization, a charge he denies. His sentencing marks a new low in Russia's escalating crackdown on civil society, which rights groups say has accelerated since the full-scale invasion of Ukraine in 2022.
Today we heard the sentence of 5 years of imprisonment for Grigory Melkonian. It is not the years we heard that are appalling. It is the fact of the conviction in this case that is appalling. We, the defense lawyers, believe that there is no evidence in this case that allows for a guilty verdict. We consider this case to be politically motivated, biased, and of course, we will file an appeal. We will fight for Grigory's freedom, because illegal, unjust verdicts should not be allowed to pass. Grigory and his efforts for many years, regularly recognized by state bodies to be up to the highest level, were aimed at ensuring that Russian authorities respected the law. He never served the interests of any political party. He always wanted to ensure that the law was respected and all election participants had equal rights. Such trials, such accusations, and such a verdict play into the hands of those who want not peaceful but forceful changes in Russia.
Foreign actors may be attempting to interfere in this Sunday's presidential election in Poland. The warning was issued Wednesday by one of the country's leading internet research and development organizations. The Disinformation Analysis Center at Poland's NASK Research and Academic Computer Network identified foreign-funded advertisements placed on social media. The posts were mainly published on Facebook. The ads focus on promoting a particular candidate and discrediting others. According to the analysis published by NASK, this points to a potential provocation tactic. The top three candidates in the upcoming election, Rafał Trzaskowski, Karol Nawrocki, and Sławomir Mencen, were the targets of the ads. The Research and Academic Computer Network says it's already taken action in response to the ads, including reporting the accounts responsible for publishing their names. The accounts have been blocked by Facebook owner Meta. An unexpected high-level spat between Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk and Romanian presidential contender George Simeon has broken out on X after the Romanian politician endorsed Polish presidential hopeful Karol Nawrocki, supported by the largest opposition group in Poland, the Law and Justice Party. Simeon and Nawrocki met in Poland 5 days before the crucial votes in both countries.
Przyszły prezydent Rumunii, przyszły prezydent Polski.
This is the plan for two like-minded European right-wing presidential candidates who met in the southern Polish city of Zabrze on Tuesday. Simeon, who won the first round of the election in Romania, is bracing himself for the runoff on Sunday. The Romanian ballot coincides with the first round of the presidential election in Poland, where Nawrocki is one of the main contenders. Simeon used the joint rally to fuel anti-EU sentiment.
The unelected European bureaucrats tried to steal democracy in Romania. But Romanian people stood up for freedom like you stood up against communism.
Simeon later joined the crowd chanting Poland and Romania common cause. For the endorsement of Nawrocki, he took flack on X from Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk.
Russia rejoices. Nawrocki and his pro-Russian Romanian counterpart, George Simeon, appear side by side on the same stage 5 days before the presidential elections in Poland and Romania. Everything is clear.
And Simeon answered back promptly, claiming it is Tusk that is Putin's friend.
In this photo is Putin's man in Poland. The whole of Europe knows it. Nobody believes your lies and hypocrisy anymore, Donald.
Simeon has for long been the presidential race favorite in Romania after he garnered almost twice as many votes as his runoff opponent, centrist mayor of Bucharest, Nicu Șordan. Now they are going neck and neck in the race a few days shy of the election. According to experts, this might compound Simeon's chance for a victory.
Last night, he agreed and he promised to participate in a political debate with Mr. Nicu Șordan on TV. He promised. He never showed up. And then we found out he was in Poland.
As for the Polish presidential race, Nawrocki is consistently polling second, trailing behind the liberal Warsaw mayor Rafał Trzaskowski of the largest group in the ruling coalition. But according to some opinion polls, Nawrocki is battling far-right Sławomir Mencen to even enter the runoff. Both Polish and Romanian elections will take place on Sunday, May the 18th.
The U.S. Department of Commerce said it will lift its restrictions on the sale of AI chips to Poland, as well as many other countries. The so-called AI diffusion rule was introduced by the Biden administration in mid-January, reportedly in an attempt to curb the spill of the technology to China and Russia. Because of the rule, a vast majority of prospective buyers, including Poland, were faced with a limit of 50,000 AI processors, with merely 18 states made exempt as key allies and partners. Now, the new Trump administration has decided to rescind the regulations, explaining that, quote, new requirements would have stifled American innovation and saddled companies with burdensome new regulatory requirements. Despite the import of chips to Poland made easier, the U.S. has pledged additional steps to strengthen export controls on the technology worldwide. And here we wrap up Midday Report at 2 p.m. Thank you for joining us and stay tuned for more on TVP World. Goodbye.